Chapter 15. By mid-morning, the human defence team had divided into roughly 3 groups. Kevin was preparing a single-handed assault on the alien mothership. Faf and Martina were getting stoned in an empty cargo hold. And Jerry, Pa's van and the Mega Drive were parked on Corran Hill next to 2 crusties. Sandra pulled Jerry out of the van and grabbed him by the elbow. She threw a suspicious glance towards Tony and Paul and leaned in close. "I need to chat to you in private. Walk out of earshot of those 2. But don't make it look like you're walking out of earshot." Since returning from space, Pa managed to spend 10 minutes sitting in the van, staring blankly and smoking. In those same minutes, Jerry managed to explain what went wrong to Sandra. Tony and Paul, whose Opel Astra was parked next to the van, had been listening intently. Sandra had been watching them listening. "Look, Jerry, I know you know that that pair are Archons, but they don't know you know that I know," she whispered. Sandra then glanced towards Tony and Paul and back to Jerry. "Listen, keep on acting like you don't know. Just let on you believe those lads work for NASA." She winked and tapped her temple. "We need to get hold of their car stereo." Jerry looked confused. "Sandra, you're making even less sense than usual. I haven't got time for this bullshit." "Well, you need to make time. That has to be a space radio plugged into the Astra, and they've tuned it to the invasion frequency. How else could they have known about the mothership?" "Huh. So what you're saying is these lads you said were aliens are aliens, but we need to pretend they're astronauts so we can get their stereo to listen for other aliens." "Yeah. But won't all the transmissions from the mothership be in, like, Jupiterian or Venusian or something?" "They will, yeah. I mean, no. Archons are too clever for that. The radio will be translating for them." "What? Into Arconian? How the fuck does that help?" "Keep your voice down, Jerry. They don't know we know they're aliens." The driver's side of the van suddenly swung open. Pa was in a hurry. "It's your fault the lads are still up there. You're full of talk, when it counts, you run like fuck." Pa came forward with a huge wing and left hand. Jerry ducked it, and the 2 men began grappling. Pa managed to hit Jerry with his elbow. "Calm down, Pa. It's the aliens we should be fighting." Jerry landed his right knee into Pa's stomach, and the pair separated. "Well, how about we get back up there then, instead of you talking shite to these 3 spacers," gasped Pa, who was trying to pretend he wasn't hurt. The row got the attention of Tony and Paul. "Hey, leave it out, lads," yelled Paul. "That's right," shouted Tony in agreement. "You're at war with the most powerful army in the universe. This is not the time for fighting." "Don't believe them," shouted Sandra. "It's a trick." "Your friends on the mothership need help," continued Paul. "Brickering down here is no use to them, especially with what young Kevin has just gotten himself into." This instantly distracted Jerry and Pa from what they'd been doing. "What do you mean by that?" snapped Pa. "Have you a way of knowing what's going on board?" "In a way, yes," replied Paul. "We've been listening to radio transmissions from the aliens all morning," continued Tony. "Bollocks, he heard the aliens on the radio. What station were they on?" "They have a space radio, Pa," explained Jerry. "The aliens aren't on any of the stations." "They got a what?" "They've got an Archon space radio. It translates Jupiterian from the mothership, so they can listen in on what the aliens are saying." "An Archon radio? Never heard of them. How much did one of them set you back?" "I don't know. Ask Sandra later. You can price a new stereo once we save the world, Pa," replied Jerry. "And after we rescue the lads." Tony, Paul, Pa and Jerry were now standing together in front of the van. Sandra quietly walked away from them and behind the vehicles. She made sure she was not seen. "What did you hear in the radio transmissions?" asked Jerry. "We heard a lot," replied Tony. "Yes, a lot," agreed Paul. "Those aliens seem to broadcast everything. Well, it sounds like everything." "I don't know about that. I've often listened to aliens broadcasting more." "Okay, Tony. Maybe it's not the most transmissions that you've ever heard," continued Paul. "But it was still loads." "Ha! You just think that because you're younger than me. I wouldn't really call it loads." "What are you on about, Tony? A second ago you said you heard a lot." "I mean, we heard a lot about what Kevin is up to. I was listening to alien transmissions before you were born, and there used to be a hell of a lot more of them out there." "Okay then, if it makes you happy, Call it not a small, but not a very big amount, replied Paul. He then turned his back to Tony and faced Jerry and Pat. Like I was saying, the aliens have been sending out regular transmissions from the mothership, probably to let their mates back home know how they're getting on with the invasion. The first one came on the radio just after breakfast saying the mothership had been attacked and the defence crew captured. That transmission sounded automated. Are you sure? I wouldn't have said it was, interrupted Tony. Pretty sure, Tony. It ended with ZB. It's FZB for automatic. Oh, right, I always get them two mixed up. Actually, no, wait, Tony, you're wrong. It's ZB for automatic, because the other messages after that didn't sound automatic, and they all ended with the FZB code. Jerry and Pa looked at each other, and then back at Paul. Will you just fucking tell me what you heard about Kevin, snapped Jerry. If you take it easy, I'll tell you, continued Paul. After the message about the mothership being attacked, we heard a pile of transmissions reporting intruders. Anyway, after that then came a signal calling back the fighters to defend the mothership. I'm guessing you know what that was about. Tony looked impatient. Tell the lads what we heard about Kevin. They don't have all day. I was getting to that, replied Paul. They asked me, not you. So how about you let me tell them? Paul shrugged and mimed the word wanker to Jerry and Pa. Anyway, not 1 minute after you arrived came an urgent transmission for all fighters to go to the lower levels of the ship. And that's your friend Kevin, interrupted Tony. The transmissions used an alien word I've never heard before, continued Paul. But as far as I can work out, it means mechanised assault. Yeah, agreed Tony. It's the word for mechanised assault. If you were around as long as me, you'd know that straight off. If I was around as long as you, I'd have learned to shut my gob every now and then, and not to spout bollocks at every turnabout, replied Paul. Sorry, lads, where was I? Oh yeah, the aliens must have been talking about your friend Kevin. He was determined to cause mayhem up on the mothership earlier. Tony didn't seem to hear. You know, listening to that transmission reminded me of the first space mission I was ever on. Except back then, we didn't have the benefit of a hyperdrive, he mused. Paul ignored him. Anyway, listen, you now have a chance to get back onto the alien mothership safely. The way I see it, if all the fighters are off to the lower levels, then you have a clean run at the launch bay and the upper sections. Ha! When you think about it, it was amazing we got out alive that time, continued Tony. You know, young Kevin reminds me of me when I was younger. Of course, things were a lot more difficult back then. From what I heard, you didn't cover yourself in glory that first mission of yours, Tony, replied Paul. You must have got a wobble in your brain that time the way you've talked at people about it since. Actually, you know what? I don't give a fuck. Nobody does. Park up the reminiscing. Bullshit anyway. Jerry began making his way back to the van. Tony took a barely noticeable step towards Paul. There's something I've always meant to say to you, he said. Jerry opened the driver's side door of the van. Tony continued talking. And that is that you're a bollocks. Paul didn't reply with words. Instead, he lashed out a kick towards Tony's legs. Tony leapt forward. Paul turned to run but stumbled. Tony caught up quickly and dumped him onto the ground. Jerry was now halfway into the van. Pa, come on for fuck's sake. You heard what's happening on the ship. We need to go. 1 minute, replied Pa, who had grabbed hold of one of Tony's elbows and was trying to drag him away from Paul. Leave it out, lads, he yelled. The human race is under attack. This is no time to be fighting. Pa, are you gone daft? Shouted Jerry. Just lead them at it. Pa joined Jerry in the cab of the van. Sandra was already inside. She looked pleased. Great work distracting those Archons, she beamed. I got hold of the radio while you were chatting. You did what? Asked Jerry. Don't worry, I swapped it for the one in this van, she explained. Those creatures won't even notice until it's too late. But what about my radio? I've had it years, said Pa. You told me it didn't work, reminded Jerry. It doesn't, but that's not the point. Haven't you just got yourself an Archon space radio out of the swap? You should be happy about it. Take off in X-3. Jerry plugged in the hyperdrive. Oh yeah, I couldn't get the radio to work, noted Sandra. So it's probably the same difference anyway. X-2, called Jerry. He turned the ignition. Clump. The van was once more transported to the middle of a giant room. This time, the room was filled with alien fighter craft, and little else. The ship's lighting was flickering on and off, and alarm sounds were ringing out from every direction. Somewhere below the room came a dull rhythmic thumping. The entire ship shook with each sound. Bleep. A photon cannon is being fired on board, remarked the Mega Drive. Bleep. It is going to destroy the ship's structural integrity, warned the Mega Drive. Bleep. You will all die.